Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
That's me.
And Larry Correia.
My mama always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Today's episode, Supporter Spectacular, Round 10.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the WriterDojo. Glad to have you back with us. It's been a minute since Larry and I have actually sat down and actually recorded an episode, just the two of us. We had quite a few episodes in a row of various interviews we've done, some live episodes and stuff. So, hopefully y'all have enjoyed those. I know as we recorded them, we were having a really good time. From David Weber to Casey Azell, Griff Barber, all these guys, they were great. Howard Jones's episode was awesome.
Well, actually, we also have now a legendary Lost episode.
We have a Lost episode.
Which we haven't told him about yet.
No, we haven't. I'll tell him about it before this episode airs, so it's not a surprise.
We actually recorded another episode at LibertyCon with Mike Massa.
Yeah.
That was great. It was a fantastic episode.
It was the stuff of legends.
And Mike talked a lot about writing. It was like using historical stuff and historical settings and historical characters. And it was super interesting. It was a really good one.
All wrapped up with time travel.
Yeah. It was an excellent episode, and it vanished. Like the file, we lost it somehow during all this. And so we'll get Mike Massa back on.
Yeah, I feel bad about that one. It was a really good episode.
It was really good. So that will now be the Lost episode.
Yes. We reference it in like 3 or 4 of the other, like the black bag episodes, as we were calling them.
Yeah, because I think Mike was actually one of the first ones we did too.
He was the first.
Was the first one.
Yeah.
So sorry, Mike, if you're listening to this, we should have told you before this airs. So hopefully you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, man.
Yeah. But look, it's not. We know Mike. We're going to get him back on. It's not a problem. But to kind of get back into things, it's been a little while, and we've had quite a few questions pile up that we need to get answered for our supporters. And so that's what this episode is going to be. It's going to be a Q&A session here from our supporters. And again, if you didn't know you could become a supporter, you can. It's pretty easy. You go over to Anchor or Spotify or whatever the frick it's called now. There's different ways you can contribute, anywhere from 99 cents a month to $10 a month. And we actually use that money to really good effect. That's literally the recording equipment that we record on now.
Yeah, we bought all our mobile equipment and all of that stuff, and a really nice Pelican case we could fly with it.
Oh gosh. I'll tell you what, we took all that to LibertyCon, and it made traveling with it a lot easier, a lot safer. My son designed all of the internal like foam guts of it and did a bang up job.
And throughout the year, we're going to be able to take that to other locations and interviews, other authors. So we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the very next thing that we're taking this to is going to be in November, and that's going to be 20 books to 50 out in Vegas. You and I are going to be there. We have officially slotted time in a room where people can come and actually watch us interview other people if they want. But I figure we'll end up recording some other episodes too.
Yeah, we're hoping to get a whole bunch of episodes there too, just like we did at LibertyCon.
Yeah, in a very different crowd.
Yeah.
So we have, we have the owner of Athon Books is going to be there. Jonathan Mayberry is going to be there. Hopefully we can.
I'd
get
love
him
to get
on the
Jonathan
show.
on.
I bet we could. We both know him. I'm moderating a panel he's on.
Actually, there's a whole bunch of really successful indie authors there. And I'd really like to get their take because most of my knowledge comes from a trade background. So I'd really like to get some of these guys that are like blowing up and doing really well in indie and get them on. We're trying to get Rothman on.
Yeah. He'll be there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he'd be offended if we didn't have him.
I know. So look, we're going to get some really cool people out there on the show. That'll be fun. So that's the next place we're going to take all this lovely equipment that you all have. Technically, you guys bought it for us, so we appreciate it. All right, so Q&As. I'm just going to get right into it, Larry. Okay, this one is from a supporter whose name is Mike. I didn't plan that very well. We were just talking about Mike Massa. Different Mike. So, his question is, he says, my name is Mike and I'm indeed a Dojo supporter. Thank you, Mike. He says, whenever I'm editing my first draft of short fiction, I inevitably come across lumps of exposition and infodumps, lodged between the teeth and gums of hair-raising action and pithy dialogue. Nice. Good job. Good description there, buddy. Sometimes the exposition isn't necessary to propel the story forward, but other times it is information I really want the reader to know. Any advice on how to craft the info dump into something that actually serves the story? Great question.
That is a really good question.
And that's hard, man, because
I wouldn't say it's limited to short fiction either.
No.
It could go either way, but on short fiction, it's definitely more telling because you're working in such a smaller arena that lump stands out more. Whoa, that's a hard one. I would say the best thing to do is if it's boring, fix it. But if it's not boring and it actually works and makes sense, it's not necessarily that info dumping is a bad thing.
right.
I mean, it gets a bad rap because it's done ham-fistedly a lot. There's a lot of bad info dumping. But if you can do an info dump that's actually entertaining and it's put in a way that is entertaining, like say you have somebody telling a story
Yeah.
to the narrator, that can work great. Or if it's something the narrator is reading, or something the narrator is, just deciphering the hieroglyphs off the temple wall, whatever it may be, as long as it's entertaining, it's not necessarily bad.
Right.
It's usually what gets you is when they have like the action comes to a screeching halt, and now here's 8 paragraphs about the history of the place they just arrived in.
I was editing a short story a really long time ago, and it started off with a bang, literal, gunshot to the face to a monster, which is great. I mean, what's not to like about a story like that? An intro.
Yep.
But like 2 paragraphs later, it goes into this 1.5 page description of the backstory of this character. And it wasn't one of those like in film where like something crazy happens and you hear like the record screech. I bet you're wondering how I got here.
Yeah, you're asking yourself, how did this happen? Yeah.
It wasn't like that. It was just bang, bang, shot to the face. Well, when I was a young boy, I learned that I had a blah, blah. And it just went on and on and on. And it's the context of the situation in which you're inserting that info dump.
Right.
Right. Hair raising, as he was saying right here, hair raising action and pithy dialogue. Well, can you craft your info dump to be part of the action?
Well, if your info dump is hair raising, then you're fine.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
What gets you is when it's not.
Yeah.
Honestly, too, another thing is look at it very meticulously and be like, what do I actually need here? Because a lot of times an info dump really isn't necessary. And like, let's say like you got that 1.5 pages. Let's say that there's like maybe a paragraph of that's really necessary for the narrative right then. Keep that.
Well, yeah, because what he says here is sometimes let me see. Other times it's information I really want the reader to know. Well, what parts?
Yeah.
What's
extraneous and what's not?
Exactly. So is it, my detective once had a ghost possess him. I don't know. It's like, okay, well, you don't need 17 paragraphs to say that. I just said it in a sentence.
Another way to look at it too is it goes back to like when I have people alpha read me, I'm looking for parts where they're bored or confused. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you think to avoid confusion, you need to give them a lot more information than they really need. You can parse out just what they absolutely have to keep from being baffled, but you can leave a lot of stuff unsaid until you have a better chance. So like a lot of times if you have an info dump, it's just because you're condensing too much vital stuff in one place. Dole it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Or what I'll do is if I'm doing info dump, like if I have a scene, rather than having all the info dump in one clump in that scene, let's say there's like 4 pieces of information that absolutely have to be conveyed. Well, I'll convey 1 at the beginning, and I'll convey 2 in the middle, and I'll convey 1 at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Spread it out, because now it's no longer a dump. It's the clumps that get you.
Well, and on top of that, I was thinking about this in terms of, say, the Werewolf Cop short story I wrote that comes out in Down These Mean Streets in, I think, January, February.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Coming soon.
Right. Okay, he's a werewolf and he's a cop. It would have been very easy for me to info dump in there and be like, well, here's how I became a werewolf. Once upon a time. Like, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
All I need to say is, yeah, I'm a werewolf. Had a bad situation once. Here I am now.
Later on when it matters, you
I can explain it later.
And when you can explain, you could also spread it out when you explain it. No, some guys are really good at info dumping, like David Weber. We had David Weber on the show. David's legend.
Yeah.
Because David will literally stop and give you, 6 pages of how the spaceship engine works, or whatever it is. But that's David, and that's the audience David's cultivated, and that's the type of stuff that David writes, and people look for that. They enjoy it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just might be a bad thing for you and what you're trying to write.
Yeah. Well, and if it's, in a short story, it's okay to not explain everything.
No, see, that's the thing too, is like on the confusion thing on a short story, a lot of times, don't over-explain. You can leave a lot of stuff open-ended on a short story because the reader's expectations of a short fiction piece is that everything isn't going to get explained.
No, exactly. So, all right. Hopefully that helped you, Mike. Let us see here.
Yeah, I think we've had quite a few questions because we haven't actually done one of these episodes.
It's been a minute.
Well, because we had all those LibertyCon ones.
Yeah. Let's see here. This is from another Mike, oddly enough.
Wow. That's 3 mics today.
I know. And the email's different, so it's a different one. Okay. How do I stop writing stories and trilogies?
How do you stop?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Just go play Xbox.
I know.
That'd be so easy for me. I just go play Call of Duty all day. Does that mean how do I end them? How do I
Well, it says, how do I stop writing stories in trilogies? I think the idea is not structuring everything into 3. And I get that, right? Because within books, we tend to, in movies and stuff, we tend to adhere to a 3-act structure.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore books series as a whole tend to adopt the larger grand scheme of a 3-act structure for a trilogy, right? Honestly, for that, there's a lot of ideas.
Honestly, the thing is, part of trilogies, we've talked about this on the show too, about writing sequels. There's the business perspective. If you have a successful thing, then you want to be able to follow it up with more successful things and get paid, right? Mm-hmm. Hence reason in certain genres, the trilogy is the expected thing, or with us, a Bayan trilogy of 5 books.
Yeah.
Or 6 books, whatever it may be. Honestly, it's just the structure you go for and the story you want to tell when you set out the gate. And one of the pieces of advice I was giving people is don't set out, especially when you're new, don't set out to write a series. Don't set out to write a trilogy. Write that first book so it can stand alone on its own.
Yeah, that we talked with Tony Weisskopf about that in one of the episodes a while back, right?
Yeah, because what happens is you don't know if that first one's going to sell good enough to make it worth your time to keep visiting it for the investment of time it takes to write 2 more books. Don't do that. Write the first one and have it be a standalone thing. Now, how do you stop? I can't tell you specifically because that's going to be a psychological issue for each individual author. Some of us are just long-winded. Mm-hmm. But if you look at Monster Hunter, it's a self-contained story.
Yeah.
I put a ton of things in there that could be expounded upon, but it was a self-contained. Hard Magic, same thing. Yep. Self-contained story could be expounded upon.
Yeah.
Son of the Black Sword, not so much, because I went into that knowing it was going to be a series because of that point of my career. So honestly, guys, I would just look at it as when I'm coming up the plan, just say, I want to tell a self-contained story with the potential for expansion.
Well, like with Residue, I could have changed one thing, basically, and had it be a completely isolated story, Well,
most horror is.
Yeah.
And you would file that under, sci-fi horror or thriller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you were to file it under the horror category, most horror isn't a trilogy, unless it's movie slashers, that kind of thing.
It's a different thing.
Totally different thing. But most horror is a one and done. Most Dean Koontz thriller type novels are one and done. Mm-hmm. The ones that get the series usually is because it's got, as we talk about the books that are named after a dude.
Yeah.
Those are the ones you get the long continuing series. But if you just set out to write a self-contained story from the beginning, that's what you're going to create.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. All right. There's another question here from him, but I'm going to save it for an episode, actually.
Oh, cool.
It's about, do you have any tips for an aspiring writer on how to write short stories and the nuts and bolts of it?
Yeah, we actually have a whole episode coming up on short fiction.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put a pin in that one.
Because I'm editing another anthology of short fiction. We were actually just started that.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a big one. Monster
Ooh,
Hunter Files 2.
Yeah. I'm excited. Okay. This one is an interesting question here. And I don't really know how much we'll be able to say on this, because you and I are pretty just generic when it comes to this. It's set, and I have no idea how to pronounce this name. It's like Tiamoid. I don't know. It's foreign. And I barely speak English these days. It says, have you guys any experience with writing software intended to help professional writers do what they do? Could you share that experience with us on the dojo?
No, I don't.
I mean, Word. I use Microsoft Word.
I use Word. I've had people ask me, "Hey, Larry, what do you think of with a Scrivener?"
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. What do you think about such and such that helps you outline? I don't know.
Well,
I couldn't even tell you what they are.
I mean, for me, I use two things. Well, three. One's very, very high tech. It's pen and paper.
Oh yeah, me and Steve and another unnamed author got together for a unnamed project the other day to brainstorm.
Not a writing project. Not getting you excited.
It's a game thing. It's
a
fun.
game thing.
And so three really smart dudes got together, and you know what my tool was? I stole a notepad out of the backpack of my son who's in middle school.
Yeah.
He hadn't used it yet. It had a couple little maps that he drew for his D&D game.
He's in middle school. He's not going to use it.
Yeah. And so I think it might be the one he takes to church to doodle in.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what it was. And so we had three really smart, professional, talented authors eating Mexican food and brainstorming for a couple hours, and I just used a notepad and a pen.
Yeah. For me, seriously, I use Word.
I just use Microsoft Word, yeah.
Or if I need to organize things in a list, I use Excel.
Yeah.
Because I'm an accountant.
You can sort of all my note-taking, organizational outline stuff is always in Word.
Yep.
And on it, yeah, Word is a piece of crap on a lot of stuff, but the stuff we're doing isn't that complicated.
Yeah. I mean, we've used Google Docs for other things.
Yeah, I'm new to Google. In fact, I had to have Brian Urbanek, who he had on the video game episode.
Yeah.
Brian had to explain to me what Google Docs was and how it works.
It's just a cloud cut rate version of Word.
Yeah, it's Word that multiple people can type into it in one place.
But it lacks a lot of the key shortcuts I've found.
I discovered that while I was because that's it. I've been using Word for 15 years nonstop as a writer, so I know every little shortcut thing. Honestly, guys, I don't know if I know some writers who are into that and they find it worth the investment and the time, but I know there are some nifty features out there about organizational stuff.
You know, and we'll get some people to come on and talk about some of those tools.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll meet a bunch of them at 20 books.
I know there's one that has some sort of thing where it like grades your prose. Like that's actually the one thing I like despise on Word is that Word has the little thing for grammar.
Yeah.
And it's completely useless for the stuff we write, right?
Yeah.
Completely. It's garbage. I ignore it. I just ignore
it. I have seen people talking about Grammarly.
Grammarly, that's the one.
Yeah, they use that. As far as prose goes, it sucks.
Yeah, I've never
at my last day job before I got laid off. That was one of the things we were using, but we were using it to check for plagiarism.
Yeah.
Which is a good useful tool, but we were using it for like marketing and technical write-ups.
On that note, did you see that I'm one of the authors that the AI whatever ripped off for to learn from?
Well, I mean,
yeah,
I can think of a lot worse authors they could use. For that.
So whatever the chat, whatever thing AI robot Skynet thing is, it's ripped off a bunch of my stuff.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we still have a few more questions because we have lots of questions. So we'll be right back.
Dr. Megan McAllister was already an unusual human. NASA astronaut, professional astronomer, polymath, when she encountered the man in the black suit that night in West Texas. What Division 1 Agent Echo didn't know when he recruited her for Alpha Line was that she was even more special. But he'd find out soon enough. Award-winning author Stephanie Osborne uses the urban legend of the beings who show up at UFO sightings and make the evidence disappear to craft her vision of the universe we don't know about. Division 1 chronicles this universe through the eyes of recruit Megan McAllister, aka Omega, and experienced partner Echo, as they handle everything from lost alien children to extraterrestrial assassination to galactic invasion and more. Alpha and Omega is available in Nook, Kindle, and trade paperback wherever fine books are sold. Pick up your copy today.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, Larry, this question's going to kind of, I don't know, it's going to be a little bit of a continuation of the trilogy question. But instead of, it's going to go the opposite way. And this is from Swayam, is the person's name. I hope I pronounced that right. Again, we've established that neither Larry and I know how to pronounce anything.
I barely speak English.
Yeah. In fact, tangent, but I saw on Twitter the other day, you were talking, or maybe it was Facebook. It was, I don't know, Facebook or Twitter. You were talking about how no one knows how to pronounce your last name.
Oh yeah, no one ever says my last name right.
And I'm like, well, it's Portuguese, right? You're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, so it's Correia.
See, that's the thing. That's how you would say it. And because because the Azorian version is really a soft H sound, but yeah, no one. So I was like, remember when everybody got all mad at George Martin because he mispronounced some names at the. Come
on, man.
And I was like, no, this racism, dude. Literally, in my 48 years of life, I would say 75% of the time when someone tries to pronounce my name after reading it, it's wrong. Who gets offended? Get over yourself.
Well, of all the things to get mad at George Martin, him not knowing how to pronounce a name is the one.
Oh yeah,
using.
there's like 1,000 things you can get mad at that guy for. He's a schlub, but he's an entitled schlub. But this guy got my name wrong. It's a microaggression. It's like, no, dude, you got a weird spelled name. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
It's like there's plenty of white people whose last name ends in ski, who their name gets mispronounced all the time, and they aren't offended.
Well, I mean, when I lived in Mexico, again, I was an LDS missionary, right? So I have the name badge, the black name badge. And one of the people came up to me and looked at it. Again, I'm in Mexico, Spanish. The word diamond, as spelled, doesn't look right when you're trying to, if you're from Latin America.
Isn't it diamante?
It's diamante.
Yeah, diamante.
So, but if you're just looking at it and you see diamond, you're like, the guy looked at it and he looked at me, looked at it and looked at me and he goes, Elder Diamond, Demonio? Which means demon? I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, whatever.
Right. Well, I was in Alabama, and so when I would be in an area that was primarily like a black neighborhood, like I served most of the time in Inslee, which is North Birmingham, right? And so literally like 96% black, right? And it was Corey. They just Elder Corey. It was like, hey, Elder Corey. Nobody could see Correia, and so it's Corey. I got Corey. I wasn't offended. I would spend months at a time being called Elder Corey.
Yeah,
and I was fine.
The question that was not asked here that we are answering. Is
that was a diversion.
Should you be offended if someone mispronounces your name? The answer is no. Don't freaking worry about it.
Yeah, writers, get over yourselves.
Like
bunch of prima donnas.
Good grief. I mean, look, okay, just from a straight up psychological thing, how many times have you read a book and you're or just been reading throughout your life and you're like, and you're pronouncing a word a certain way, and then one day someone says it out loud and you go, well, crap, is that how that's pronounced?
Oh, Shannara.
Yeah, Terry Brooks says it's Shannara.
Yeah, well, it's one of the, I said Shannara my whole life.
I did too.
And I'm sitting on a panel with Terry Brooks himself, and he goes, Shannara, and I'm like,
oh,
whoa. Okay, obviously I'm wrong, but, I don't think Terry's going to get offended.
I actually asked him that. He said he didn't get offended by it.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
No,
He's a cool guy.
He has millions of reasons not to be offended by it.
He call it whatever he wants as long as the check cashes.
No, my point is, guys, as an author, stop being offended by everything.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just chill.
That wasn't even a question. We just got in a strange diversion there. Yeah.
But we asked ourselves our own question and answered it for you.
you
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, we are supporters of the podcast.
I've supported this podcast a lot.
All right. Okay, this question is from Mike. No, I'm just kidding. As we were over the break, as we were looking at some of the other questions, 3 or 4 of them more were from different people named Mike. Apparently, we have a lot of people named Mike.
This is also why I have such a hard time getting through my charity list. We auction off red shirt spots for charity. We paid for spinal surgery last time, and I'm still using those names. That's because half of you guys are named Mike and Chris, and I can only put so many Mikes and Chris into each book, and otherwise it confuses people.
Yeah.
So I got to spread y'all out.
Yeah. All right. So this question again, Swayam, I think. He says, in an episode a couple weeks back, you talked about how newer writers are being encouraged to write trilogies for their selling power, which is true, but are often dropped because readers don't pick up the following books. That was our rant episode.
Yes.
But when writers try to write standalones, they can't get published because those books have less selling power.
Yep.
Which is true. Now, what we just talked about in terms of trilogies is write that first book as if it could stand alone in case you get screwed like this.
Right. You don't have to. If you look at like the stuff I've done, what I try to do is I will tell a self-contained arc. So there's a beginning, middle, end. I have like a bad guy who gets defeated. I have a challenge that is overcome, but there's a broader world. Mm-hmm. It takes place in a world, but I don't have to answer every question in the world. And I can even have references to events that are going to happen in the future.
Or that happened in the past.
I can introduce other potential adversaries. I've done that a lot, where this guy is just over here. We're probably going to have to deal with him someday.
Yeah.
But you don't have to explain it all. But you have to put these hooks.
Yeah.
And if you read Monster, actually, for a new guy, I scored on that one. I rolled the dice on that, and I did really good. I set a ton of hooks that I didn't finish off, and I didn't explain. Some huge ones.
Yep.
Huge hooks. Who's Frank's? I mean, heck, look how I end the book. I mean, it's like, hey, we straight up nuke the old ones.
He had it coming.
And the thing is, but I could have walked away.
I don't want to misgender the old one.
It's all genders and none simultaneously in a universe of eternal madness. And squid, mostly. Yeah. So I had these hooks, but the overall story, with that fight against this one bad guy trying to blow up the world, they were triumphant. But it opened up so much other stuff. So that's I think the ideal way to do it. Mm-hmm. So you can go one and done and walk away, or you can have enough hooks that you can immediately flow into the next story.
So on that, his question goes, what about duologies?
Oh.
Now, there are a few people I've seen do duologies. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. If you want to write a duology, write one. Like whatever. Here's what I do think the challenge is with duologies. It kind of feels like you have one foot in the camp and one foot out of the camp. You're saying, oh, well, I don't want to write just a standalone, so I'm going to write 2 books. But I also don't want to write a series, so I'm only going to do 2 books.
You don't see that very often, and I
really
actually don't know, like, if there is a publishing industry reason why, like a business reason.
I'm literally looking behind Larry at all my bookshelves, and I see 3, 5, 10. Yeah, I don't really see any duologies on my shelf right now.
The things I can think of that I'm drawing a blank on titles, but I know this has happened where it's been just one giant book
split in two.
Yeah, I know that happens once in a while.
That happens a lot, especially but a lot of times it happens in series.
Yeah, there's a very real possibility that might happen with some of the end of Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, depending on how it shakes out.
I don't think anyone's got a problem with that.
It might just be a really big book.
Split it in two.
I'm working on it right now, so.
Yeah, look, I mean, tell the story you want to tell. If that story takes 2 books, okay. Okay, so for example, me and Mike Rothman, okay, we've been writing these Alicia Yoder books.
Yeah, New Arcadia.
Yeah, New Arcadia is the first one. That's already out, and Operation Thrall comes out on Black Friday. And we're tying that one off right now. It's going through edits right now. So that's meant to be an ongoing series, not unlike Monster Hunter or whatever, or like Jack Reacher or Repairman Jack or whatever, right? More Repairman Jack.
Yeah.
It's very much Repairman Jack in a Michael Crichton
I love
world.
Repairman Jack.
Obviously. That's the only time I've ever seen you geek out is F. Paul Wilson.
He's so cool.
So with this, the first book came out and it kind of serves as an introduction, but then the second book really kind of ties a bow on the introduction of this character and tells you who she is. It forms a loose duology. And then we're going to go off from there and do things. But it's not by itself, if that makes any sense. It could be. And at the end of Operation Thrall, I mean, if the world got nuked the day after, no one would care anymore. But, it would be okay if those 2 books were the only 2. Now, that's not what's going to happen. I mean, we have 2 more in the pipeline to be released next year. But point is, tell the story you want to tell. We live in an age where it kind of doesn't matter anymore, man. I mean, I think you're going to find it challenging to publish a duology with traditional publishers.
Yeah.
But indie?
Indie, I don't think there's
do whatever you want.
I can't
No one
see any
cares.
reason you couldn't.
Yeah, no one cares.
I'm not thinking of any reason.
No. So
I
there's
would.
that.
My only thing I want in Indie is I would be hesitant to have too much of a gap between them. If I was going to do 2 books, like if I was going to do a duology, I would try to bang.
Yeah, back to back.
Back to back, pretty close release.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't stretch that out if there's only going to be 2.
No, not at all.
I don't really have a concrete business reason for that off the top of my head. Just my instinct would be I'd want those close.
Yeah. Okay. Our last question for today, and this goes back to a really old question that you and I were talking about from another guy named Mike, oddly enough. I'm not joking. The question isn't from Mike. It's about it's from the friend and writing partner of a guy named Mike. We were talking about oh gosh, what was it? But we called this guy, or like we called him a savage brute in one of the questions. I'm trying to remember what the question was.
This one.
Anyway, the question's from Nick. And he says, all right, so Nick has this question, and he says, it's a rather large question with background and stuff, which is fine. The gist of it is he's getting out of the Army soon, and he wants to know about interning with publishers.
Oh.
And so he says, what's the best way to ask to intern with them?
I know that is a thing.
It is. He's like, how should I approach publishers? Just a quick and dirty short email? Should I mention that he's an author and wants to get involved? How strongly should I emphasize that I want to focus on writing, even if I'm willing to train and work in other areas like editing? So publishers have lots of very diverging jobs within the companies.
Well, and they're wildly different people at different publishing houses too. So I don't know if there's an easy right answer on this one.
Here's what I will say. Most publishers are smaller than you think they are in terms of personnel.
Right, yeah.
Okay. They're small businesses. Doesn't matter how much money they bring in every year. They're technically small businesses from a employee count, right? And think about it this way too. All of the authors that work for them are technically independent contractors, just from a business standpoint.
Yeah. I'm self-employed.
You get a 1099 from them.
Even though I write books for Bayan, I'm self-employed.
Correct. So anytime you're in a small business, and you and I have very firsthand experience working together, oddly, with all this, not oddly, but naturally. But when you're working in a small business as a literal employee for the business, you're very rarely doing just one thing. When you and I worked together, for example, we dabble. Obviously, our main job was accounting, but then we were doing pricing. We were helping with HR here and there. We were helping with contracts. We were helping with.
I hated the human resources
Oh
part.
gosh, that was why we had Mike.
Another Mike. Well, we hired a guy named Mike. He was great. He was
Yeah.
awesome. Love that guy.
I think we're supposed to have dinner with him soon.
Oh, cool.
But we would help with writing on business development proposals. Although they tended to, they kind of kicked us out of the room a few times because we kept telling them how bad their writing was.
Yeah, we actually were writers, not government contract writers. Government contract writing is like this bizarre, illiterate, weird crap.
It's written like a weird third person, divorced from yourself.
Trying to summon Cthulhu.
It's so freaking weird.
It's so awful.
Anyway, point is, you're wearing like 6 or 7 different hats. Okay, and the smaller the company, the more hats you're going to wear.
Yeah.
Because small companies can rarely afford to bring you on to just do one thing. Okay. So, to your question, or to some of your questions in there, Nick, if you want to intern with a publisher, you want to work for a publisher, you're going to have to do more than one thing for them, almost guaranteed.
And as far as like the nuts and bolts of how do you actually apply for this, I have no idea.
You know what we should do? Maybe at some point we should get like Chris Rocchio and Jason Cordova on.
Have done that.
They've either interned or just straight up worked.
Or been like entry level employees
Yeah.
at like both of those guys have done that.
Yeah, I bet we could get them, maybe Butler, in to talk about their experience in terms of what it was like, how they got on board with Bain,
Right.
and started just doing either small time work for them, interning work, low
Yeah, 'cause
level
I
work.
don't even know if is this the kind of thing they post even, or
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So Nick, we're gonna have to do some research on that one because we do have some friends that have done this, like Jason Cordova, Chris Rocchio. I honestly have no earthly idea
Yeah,
on
me
that.
neither.
I know that publishing industry interns exist,
They do. Well, I mean, we know they exist because Chris was one of them.
but I don't know how they get there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's magic.
It's just like Bigfoot. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where do babies come from?
I don't know.
Magnets. How do they?
I don't
work?
know. I'm not a biologist, Larry. There's an old school reference for you guys.
We're gonna do some research for you, Nick.
Okay. So that's about all the time we have for you today for questions. There's some more questions, but they tend to be either they're too big. One will be a full episode. One will be part of another episode we're going to record a little bit later here. So bear with us. But yeah, again, look, if you guys have any questions, especially you supporters out there, throw them our way. We're happy to answer them. So yeah, so that's about all the time we have for you today. We appreciate it. Thank you, all you supporters. Thank you, all you non-supporters out there too, for just listening to us and putting up with our random tangents in the middle of an episode. No, we really do appreciate you all. Again, this is the Writer Dojo, and we'll see you on the next one.
WriterDojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nivo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
And I was like, it's racism, dude. Call it whatever you want as long as the check cashes.